Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's Smart Company webinar, The Importance of SEO and Social Media. My name is James Thompson and I'm the editor of smartcompany.com.au, and I'm joined today by Jim Stewart from Stewart Media. Jim, welcome.
Thanks, James. Good to be here.
Great to have you along, and we've got a rapidly filling house as we speak, so we'll get to the Jim's presentation very quickly. A little bit of housekeeping. Best way to listen today is via your computer. Audio will be automatically streamed through your computer speakers for the duration. Excuse me. Tools you can use. The best one today is the question pane. Jump in there, type your question, click send. We'll do our best to get to as many questions as we can. Where appropriate, we'll address them as we go along, and we'll also have some time at the conclusion of today's presentation for you to pepper Jim with some tough questions. Okay, I would also like to thank today's sponsor, Victoria's Small Business Festival, brought to you by the Victorian Government, who's a long-term partner of us here at Smart Company. August 1 to August 31, so still a week or so to go. www.business.vic.gov.au/festival. Some terrific events to get along to, both in metropolitan and regional areas of Victoria. So we do encourage you to get along to that. Now, without any further ado, let me formally come to today's presenter, Jim Stewart, who's the owner of Stewart Media and a regular correspondent on all things SEO here at Smart Company. Jim, SEO, one thing I always remark on is how quickly the goalposts seem to change, seemingly from month to month, and just as soon as a business has probably got what they think is their SEO strategy down pat, suddenly the goalposts shift again. Is it tough to keep on top of for even a professional like yourself?
Not if you follow the fundamentals with what Google's trying to do, which is basically provide the most relevant results to a user. Where you get into trouble is if you're trying to trick Google or scam Google or game the results. And so Google's forever trying to move beyond that. And a lot of the changes that we've seen this year even are doing just that. But I mean, Google itself says they make about 7 changes a week to the algorithm.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's hard work, and I guess we don't see many of them. But today we want to talk about one of the really important, and I guess an area that's grown of importance, and that's the combination of search and social, Jim. Something that's really become probably a focus of your work in the last few years, I'd imagine.
Very much so. One of the things that Google's been trying to do to make its results more relevant is looking at some of the social signals that are now out there. And I think it's important for businesses too who get bombarded with information about social media, about Twitter, about YouTube, about Facebook, and then trying to work out where search still fits into all that, which is why today I wanted to talk about how the two fit together and how they're fundamentally different.
All right, well, let's jump into it.
The main thing with search, whether it be we're talking about pay-per-click advertising or even just normal organic search, the searcher is on a solo discovery tour. It's not a social activity. It's very much, I'm in front of my computer and I need to find out something now. And that's one of the fundamental differences between a search and a social experience. As we know, social is very much about community. It's about engaging with other people. It's about sharing things. And it's about communicating. And one of the mistakes that we see time and time again with some businesses is that they will tend to show up in a suit to a party where they'll just move into Twitter and start flogging their wares, or every update that they do on Facebook is about trying to sell something. And in a social environment that doesn't work too well because it's tantamount to showing up and talking to people about selling your wares. And the way that social integrates with search is that search tends to bring experiences back to a community. So whether it be a forum, whether it be Facebook, whether it be any other sort of site that brings people together. Good searches in a community are greatly valued members because they help grow the community. They help discover new experiences for the network or the community. And to give you an example of that, some people might go into a social environment and ask questions of their network because they're unable to find the answers, or they just haven't bothered to search. And a lot of the time those answers come back via search from a community member actually out there searching for those answers.
Jim, can I just jump in?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, Jim, just a couple of requests for you to speak up a little bit louder if you could. Thanks.
All right. Now you've asked for it, I'm going to project. Yeah, so search is about bringing the discovery of new experiences back to the communities. One of the other things that's very different, because people often talk to us about, well, why don't people just ask their networks for an answer instead of going to search? The reason for that is that a network or a community is not always suited to answers for an individual, because for a lot of people in my generation, they only use Facebook purely to photos and those sorts of things. So the network size will determine the quality of the answers that you'll get from those networks. Whereas search, it's instant, the answers are always there, and people tend to validate with the community the things that they find in search. But fundamentally, people do trust search results, especially Google. And in Australia, we're talking about over 95% of the search market uses Google. And to give you an example or an idea of how much people trust search, when the former federal government, or I should say the Howard government, launched its Work Choices campaign, I think it was 6 or 7 years ago now, we ended up ranking #1 for the word work choice because of a blog post I'd written on the differences between singular and plural ranking in Google. And we got so many phone calls from people wanting to know what their obligations under work choice were, simply because we ranked #1 for the phrase. They didn't look past the fact that our site had nothing to do with the government. They just found our phone number. Because we ranked #1, they rang us up and wanted to know what their obligations were. We've heard a lot in the last 12 months I've heard a lot in the last 12 months that SEO is dead. Search engine optimization is dead. But as Mark Twain says, reports of our death are greatly exaggerated. And the thing is with search is that it is a different experience to social. And we can search within a social environment as well, within a social network. And wherever there is a search algorithm, there is going to be a need for search engine optimization. And one of the things with search, and we talk about it being available, you can search your social network as well. I mean, up until recently, Google had a real-time search facility for Twitter, but they've since abandoned that, and they've gone with their own social network called Google+. But search isn't just about Google. All the things that we find in the Google index have to have been crawled by the Google bot. Now, a lot of sites may not have all of their site accessible via the Google bot, either by accident or design. So search is also about the sorts of things that people say in forums, the sorts of things that are written on a site, in a blog post, in articles, and all these things, and even on Twitter. And search Twitter, if you're not a Twitter user, you may not know this, but the fundamental difference, say, between Twitter and Facebook is that Twitter is more about discovery. People can have keyword searches running, and they can find people who are talking about those keywords anywhere they are in the world when they tweet about them. You can't do that with Facebook. Facebook has less of the search functionality in it than, say, Twitter or Google Plus does, for that matter. But it's when people are searching, they're using key phrases. So it's of vital importance whenever you're publishing online, whenever you're engaging online as a business, is to know what your keywords are, know what your key phrases are. It's about the vernacular. It's about avoiding the use of jargon. A few years ago, we had a client who wanted to rank for the phrase employee value proposition, which was a great phrase for his industry, but it turned out that the acronym, which he also wanted to rank for, EVP, stood for electronic voice phenomena, which is what most people were searching for, which had nothing, of course, to do with his business. And the phrase employee value proposition, no one was searching for. So it's about keeping away from the jargon. Remember that the keywords that you use in communicating are what form the foundation of any sort of keyword or search media campaign, or even for that matter a social media campaign that you do. It's how people discuss you. And to give you an example of that, when people are talking about things that they may have found in Google or found on YouTube, they'll say to you, "Oh, just type in funny dog video." I think that's what brought it up. So people talk about the types of words that you use in your own marketing, and also what sticks in their head. And to give you another example of this, one of the interesting things that's happened in recent times is a large yellow paper directory had a very annoying, but I would say successful campaign on television. And the key phrase that came out of one of their ads was, "Look at me." And for some months after that campaign, that ad couldn't be found online because the phrase "look at me" wasn't contained within the title of the ad on YouTube or in the description. And it wasn't to another blogger pointed that out, and they changed that the ad was found. But people were actually searching for the ad, but they weren't using the brand, and they weren't using that the brand was trying to put across. They just used what stuck in their head. And so even if you're doing an offline marketing campaign, it's important to understand what the key phrasing is that's coming out of that campaign, and make sure that you rank for it in Google, because we've seen before when someone, say, does a social media campaign, and this is the case of Razzmatazz, they did a social media campaign and their brand searches went through the roof on Google. So people hear about something through a community and then they go searching for it. The main thing that you have to do, and this applies to search now as well as, of course, community and engaging, is create great content. And that can include a lot of different things. It could just be, a constant stream of tweets. It might be YouTube videos. It might be a Facebook page. But I would highly recommend that someone in your organization, if you're not already, start blogging. And I'll explain the reason why blogging is still so important and going to be more important in the future. Adding content to your site in the way of articles is another good way to create content. Google Plus is if anybody's been on that, is growing in popularity and is a great way to add content. I would also get involved with forums, especially if you are in an industry where people have questions about the sorts of products that you use. They might be of a technical nature. They might be, in the photography space, in the computer space. If you are involved in forums and helping people answer questions about your product, could even be recipes or a related industry like that, and you're selling and you sell products that relate to that industry. If you're in forums and you're contributing, and most forums will allow you to have some sort of signature when you make a post, then you become the authority on that particular topic, and it helps bring people back to your brand, as well as it's actually a good way to get a legitimate backlink to your site, because every link that goes back to your site, Google looks at as sort of a vote for your site, and in forums that's quite a legitimate way to get links to your site. But the key thing is with the future of search and social, of course, is to get involved and publish. A lot of business say, but I'm not a publisher. I've got no time to write. I can't write. It's too hard to write. And God knows I know that because I've done a weekly video for about the last 5 or 6 years. And every Wednesday, it's very difficult to sit down and spend 4 or 5 hours working out what the topic should be, researching the topics, what should I be publishing, what should I be talking about. But the reason that I do it religiously is because it is an opportunity to expose our brand to more people. It helps us become an authority in our given topic. And I see it as important as my friend David Meerman Scott does, who's a best-selling author of social media books. And one of the things that he says, well, how important is exercise to you? How important is that? Do you make time for exercise? If you make time for exercise, you need to make time to publish for your business because it's that important. It's how people find you, it's how people relate to you, and it's how they engage with you. And a lot of people will outsource content production, or, as we've done recently, we've actually hired a brand journalist. There's some exceptions to outsourcing, though, which I think are very important. In case you haven't seen this tweet, it was done by the Chrysler car company, and this happened earlier this year. And in case you can't see that tweet, I will read it for you. I find it ironic that Detroit is known as the Motor City, and yet no one here knows how to bleeping drive. And bleeping, of course, is a euphemism. And that tweet was written by someone who Chrysler had outsourced the tweeting tasks for their brand. I don't think it's a good idea to outsource real-time publishing. And the reason for that is that you don't have a chance to approve it if you're outsourcing it. I would recommend outsourcing any sort of article writing or even blog posts where you can speak to your brand journalist and say, okay, these are the things I want you to talk about in this blog post. Some brand journalists will also sit down and ask questions of the CEO or the person, the line manager who has responsibility for this particular item of interest. But real-time outsourcing on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, probably not a good idea unless you've got a system in place to approve those things before they go out. In the case of Chrysler, this probably would have been someone who was tweeting via the wrong account and they didn't realize it, because there's a lot of tweet management software, and they will allow you to set up different accounts and tweet as different people.
Jim, can I jump in with a question there?
With publishing, sure.
Just on content creation, and a great your example of doing a weekly video is a great one. But how much time do you spend in generating ideas to try and find something to write about or find something to tweet about? That's the thing. A lot of people say to us that I'm keen to tweet or post, but I just don't know what to do. Have you got any idea generation tips for us?
Yeah, certainly. First thing I would do with Twitter is get a tool like TweetDeck on the desktop and set up some keyword searches with TweetDeck, and you'll see people tweeting about things that relate to what your interests are or what your business interests are. One of the things that you can also do with Twitter is set up those searches to include the initials RT. So that will show you searches that relate to what you're interested in that other people have retweeted. So chances are they're more relevant to to what you're interested in, and you can use those as a source of either blogging yourself or responding to or going to contribute on those blogs, or actually just simply retweeting and opening it up to your own audience, or doing a post on your Facebook page about. The other thing that you can do is set up Google News Alerts if you have a Gmail account, and that will bring you back information that people are talking about that relate to what your interests are. And I would strongly recommend that you do it for your own brand if you're not already. And you can see where people are talking about your brand and how your brand is being discussed, and then you can go to those communities or those networks and contribute yourself. And also with YouTube, even if you think it's appropriate, and you can just go to YouTube and do some searches yourself, set up an account and subscribe to different publishers of content that you think are worthy of subscribing on. Like most social networks out there, and like the internet itself, there's a lot of noise and a lot of nonsense on YouTube, but there is some really important stuff as well.
Yeah, and I think it's important, Jim, to just emphasise there that you don't have to, you know, write an essay every time you're doing a blog post. Just linking to a great video or an interesting story or an interesting extract from a story is often enough.
Yeah, certainly. And look, as far as Google's concerned, if you want to get recognised for Google as a regular publisher of content, which is a good thing, you know, a couple of hundred words, you know 150, 200 words is enough, as long as you've got something for people that interests them. And the goal here too with any content that you publish, you're trying to get others to recommend you, republish you, and I'll explain why in a few seconds. But it's about getting other people to share your content. And if you're, I often get asked also about the question on Twitter, because we see it a lot, should we tweet as the brand or should it be a personal? With Twitter, I think it's a good idea to have a brand-based Twitter account and understand and have some social media guidelines of how that is to be used. And you know, those social media guidelines, you know, can be, you know, we're not abusive. We don't use bad language like Chrysler Autos ended up doing, or any of those sorts of things. But also have an idea of what your brand voice should be. Now, on Twitter in Australia, someone who's doing this quite well, I believe, is Crust Pizza, and you can follow them up at their Twitter ID up there on the screen. But Crust Pizza is doing very well behind their brand. They're tweeting out with some attitude. Poster Rev is another one out of the US that does it very well, and that's Posterrev. And they do a lot of tweeting real time in relationship to their content. And one of the things that one of the ways they engage, they sell posters basically. One of the things that they do on their own site is that if people retweet their content or like their Facebook page or share their content, they get points on their own account when they go back to the Poster Revolution site, and they get free stuff for doing that. So there's some quite innovative ways that Twitter is being used to engage customers. And it depends on the level or where your market is, and whether you're a consumer brand, whether you're B2B, all those sorts of things. For the more corporate approach, I would highly suggest following NAB and also Telstra. I believe CBA is now also on Twitter and seeing what they do. The way that these businesses and these corporations are using Twitter is primarily for a customer service role. Telstra is doing it. I kicked Telstra a lot over the years for their customer service, but I think they're doing it very well on Twitter, and NAB as well. I have once again kicked Banks before the way they use social media, but NAB is doing quite well.
And someone from the audience has thrown up Westpac as another example, Jim. So sounds like the banks are putting some time and effort into it.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's great to see, actually. It's and they must have some very strong social media guidelines internally, and typically with the NAB or Telstra, you'll see a set of initials after the tweet, and there's different tools that will do that, which would indicate which employee was responsible for that tweet, and that gives a bit of management around the actual content that's published. As far as blogs go, they should be, in my humble opinion, and I would suggest following someone like Darren Rouse, who is also known as Pro Blogger on Twitter, and he's one of Australia's most celebrated bloggers. But in my opinion, and I think he would agree with this, typically a blog should be a person. It's a bit odd to have it behind the brand because you may as well just write an article. But a blog is certainly a personal, not necessarily opinion, but it's coming from a personal space. So if you are planning on having a blog, have a think about who the blog should come from. Should it be the CEO? Should it be someone in sales? Should it be someone in marketing? But understand what it is they're going to be blogging about, and get someone else to write it and then to approve it if they don't have time to write it. That's certainly a legitimate way to do it, as long as it represents what they would say. And your brand, of course.
Jim, question from both Kate and Elizabeth, the same question around Twitter for B2B. This is a question we get a lot in the social media area. Social media really does seem to work well for B2C, but I guess there's a lot of services type businesses out there that struggle with it. Any tips? I mean, I would have thought there's a lot of scope for retweeting company or industry news or trends or stuff that positions you as an expert in your sector.
Definitely. I mean, look, we're a B2B. We're a service business. We're 16 employees, and we make sure that all our employees are on Twitter or on Facebook and all these other things. And for us as a B2B, it's about a couple of different things. It's about business networking. The days that I used to go to, I don't go to that many business breakfasts anymore, but we certainly use it to connect with like-minded individuals or other businesses that might be in a similar peers in the industry. We connect with other SEO companies via Twitter and have discussions about different things. And it's about being out there and engaging and being seen as an authority for the industry that you're in. So at a brand level, we also use Twitter for a couple of different things. We use Twitter to attract new staff, so that people who are coming up in the industry here on Twitter and follow our brand, we often tweet what's happening at a staff level via the brand. And that's, to do a couple of different things. That's to not only attract new staff, but that's also to alert audiences to the content we're publishing. And it's important to understand that on my personal Twitter account, I will sometimes tweet, in fact, a lot. I tweet a lot of nothing that has to do with our company, but just purely things that interest me. And we've got a lot of leads via Twitter, and we haven't solicited those leads, and we haven't gone out and said, hey, we've got a special coming up or anything like that. It's purely because we've connected, as you would in the business networking sense, and people have recommended us via the content that we publish. And I'll quote David Newman Scott again here. He says you are what you publish. And we've had some very good leads and sales that have come purely through the networking that we're doing on Twitter.
And just before we move on, Jim, quick question from Michael. What's the best place to create a blog? Should it be on the company's website or a personal WordPress or similar page?
I would definitely say on the company's website. The reason I say that is that you then control the content, and it's actually on your site. There's some questions that you probably need to ask yourself as a company, is that if an employee leaves and the blog is written in their name, you have to have an understanding before that happens, what happens to the content that's written. But I would definitely say on your own site. It also helps bring the Google back to your own site too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, using key phrases.
Yeah, it's important that to use the key phrases in the right areas. There's some basics that that people don't do, even though they want to rank for a particular phrase. In this case, what we're looking at here is I was contacted by a viewer who is the webmaster for the Cook County government, which basically is the county that covers Chicago and in Illinois. And we went and had a look at their site, and one of the things that I do with the weekly video blog is review other people's sites and give them advice on SEO. And if you look at this search here in YouTube, and YouTube is the second biggest search engine after Google, every day than Bing or Yahoo put together. But my video there is number one for Cook County government. And the reason for that is that the phrase Cook County government is in the title. The phrase Cook County government is in the first sentence of the description. And I've also used it in the tagging. And the same applies to a web page too. It's about using the phrases that you want to rank for. And it seems like quite a simple concept, but people get hung up, I think, in jargon rather than what their customers are actually talking about. Jetstar locally is a company that's got this right now. In the early days of SEO, airlines were trying to rank for low-priced airfares. If you go to Jetstar now, you'll see in their page title it says cheap flights, and that's what it's about. And in case you don't know what your page title is, when you browse a page through your browser, have a look at the very top bar in Internet Explorer. It's the blue bar up the top, and have a look at your own site and see what your phrases are. The first phrase that's in that page title is the first thing that you're telling Google about your site. And for a lot of companies, they've simply got it wrong. And in the worst case scenarios, they haven't put anything in there, or they've just put homepage or something. And that does nothing to tell Google what your site's about. Hey, skipped a page. Let me go back. The thing that's happened in the last 6 months is Google really looking at social signals. I mentioned earlier that Google had a real-time marketing search component, which is now gone from the search engine, and basically it was doing, amongst other things, showing what was coming up in Twitter. They're no longer doing that for a variety of reasons, but some of the things that they are doing now are extremely interesting for signaling what's happening to Google in the future. And one of the main things is +1s. If you are logged into Google, if you have a Gmail account, you will see these coming up in your search results now. And basically, it's like a vote for a search result. If someone +1 something in the Google results, it's a bit like the old Facebook like, but it is less public than that. It will only show up when somebody else in your network sees that. Shares on Facebook are great things to get, and that's when someone shares one of your posts on Facebook, because that's a bit like a backlink or a vote for that thing that you've published. And that can only happen if you've put a link up with something. In our case, we do it every company page. We share the blog post with the video, and that's the sort of thing we want others to share that are connected to our page. As far as Twitter goes, I would think less about it being as used for something for backlinks, and more about opening up your content to a wider community and getting other people to share it. Because the nature of Twitter is that its lifetime is limited. And whilst Google still does index Twitter, it's a very transient medium. And so the relevancy of something as it ages is less than when it was first published. And what Google is always looking for is relevancy signals. LinkedIn is also a great place to set up a footprint. And with all of these things, don't make any of these things your main home base, if you like. Do what Chris Brogan, the blogger, says, and he talks about a hub and spoke. Set up a home base, which should be your website, because that's something you own and control, and use all these other outlets as outposts, if you like, to your business's content. Sorry, PowerPoint's been a little bit flaky today for me. Social search integration, this is what I was talking about a second ago. Over here we've got the +1 button that you'll see when you're logged into search. And you can see here I'm logged in as me, so it's telling me that I shared this. Now that basically means that because I've got a large network, I'm going to see a whole lot of people that will have +1 content. It does actually affect the rankings of content on the page for people that are logged in that are in your network. So it affects rankings in a limited way. It doesn't, we've got companies out there now selling, 50,000 +1s. It's a ridiculous notion. It's a pointless exercise. And the reason that Google's integrating all these sorts of things is to stop people gaming or scamming the search system. But what it's saying is that if someone has in your network has +1 this search result, then you might find that valuable and increase your click-through rate. But the thing to ask yourself here is, how much do you know about your own customer? How much do you have buyer personas set up for your customers? Are they even likely to be using Gmail? The only way that you can influence these +1s, or that someone here shared this, is by creating great content. So it gets back to create your business if it's not already. The Google profile, though, is something that I strongly recommend and suggest that you go and set up if you haven't already. This is associated with your Gmail account, and if you have any other Google accounts, it's associated with that as well. Go and set it up, because Google's done some very interesting things with the Google profile ever since it launched its new social media tool, Google+. And a lot of people have said, Google Plus sort of takes the best bits of Facebook and also Twitter and puts them into one environment. And I think that's, not a bad description. It does a lot more than that. But the interesting thing that it's done with Google Profile, with the launch of Google Plus, is that it's made it more important than ever. And you can see down here on the side, I've got links to the different social media properties I'm involved with. So my YouTube channel, my Twitter account, the homepage, our Facebook page, and different photo pages and those sorts of things. And the reason this is so important is Google is raising the importance of your Google profile with a thing called authorship markup. And this is something they launched back in June. And I'll try not to get too nerdy here at the moment, but just briefly, whenever I write an article on our own site, my name links back to my bio page, my author biography page on our site. That page then links to my Google profile to say, this is me over here. And my Google profile links back to my author page. And that's so that the reason that Google has announced this and implemented this is so that you will start to see things in Google in the not too distant future that will attribute authorship to search results. And for instance, down here I write for the Switzer site, Grow Your Business. And whilst they haven't got this set up yet, I'm going to strongly suggest they set it up as well. Because what Google's trying to do here, and what they've realized, is that people aren't interested in pages that have the most backlinks. They are interested in pages that have the best content. And so what Google is trying to do is work out, does an author have good authority? And some of you who are in the social media scene or the tech scene may be familiar with a guy called Robert Scoble. And you'll start, and this is an example of authorship markup in practice. And what Google's trying to do by providing this information that this article was written by Robert Scoble, content more relevant. Now the key thing here is, unlike the +1 buttons, you don't have to be logged into your Gmail account or any Google account whatsoever to see these results. It's available to everyone regardless whether they have a Gmail account or not. That's why it's so important for businesses now to make sure that key staff members are setting up their Google profiles, and especially if they're the ones that are going to be publishing content. And to that end, a few of us in the industry are looking at authorship and thinking, is this a new PageRank? PageRank was the value out of 10 given to every page on the web, and that was based essentially on the PageRank of other pages linking to that page, if you can follow that. And basically, it was a measure of the quality and the quantity of backlinks. But over the years, it's been easily gamed, it's been easily scammed, and Google's always trying to move beyond that. And authorship looks like something that they're saying that, okay, we're going to do a couple of things with this. We're going to, first of all, stop the content thieves out there. Because what can happen a lot of times is that as soon as someone publishes something with a given key phrase, there are all these sorts of bots out there that will scrape that content and repurpose it as their own. And inadvertently, the content thieves will rank higher than the original author. So one of the things that Google's doing with this authorship code is saying, okay, we know now who the original publisher of this content was because we can confirm it through the use of authorship code. So we've got attribution set up. And also what's going to happen with this down the track is that not only will content be more valuable in the eyes of Google the more shares that it gets, but the author that wrote that content, the more shares that they get, their authorship value will go up. So if you have a situation, say 12, 18 months from now, where you have two pieces of content that might be equal in all other SEO values with keyword density, with number of backlinks, with the amount of relevant content on the page, the one that has the better author or the author that has more authority with Google, that will be the one that will rank higher. So the key takeaways for me that we're looking at now with Google and how it's integrating with search and the signals that it's using, how Google's integrating with social and the signals that it's using. And incidentally, this photograph is an original photograph. Now I'm a vegetarian, but as an initiation, our other staff, one of our newest staff members, and yes, he did eat it, unfortunately. But one of the things is that the more that you publish, the more the chance that you have to rank. So it's simply a frequency. The more venues that you publish in, whether it be a blog, or whether it be commenting on someone else's other blog, whether it be a guest writer on someone else's site, the more chance your content has to rank, and the more people it will expose to your brand. And in the case of Twitter for us, as I've said, it's the more that you connect, the more referrals that you will get. There may be people watching your tweets out there, they may be watching your YouTube videos out there that you haven't even heard of. We got a $250,000 client that connected to us through YouTube. I mean, that's the power of this. And that particular manager decided that I was the most authoritative person in Australia about SEO because he had been watching the videos. Didn't subscribe to our weekly newsletter, but certainly subscribe to the YouTube channel, unbeknownst to me. And with social, the key thing here is that if you are going to get involved, contribute, assist, and engage. Always help people, and always remember to use the key phrases that mean something to your audience, because they're the people that are going to be searching for them. And in case anybody wants to contact us, that's what we do. And still the main area of business for us is very much search, because it all starts with search, even though I can't actually spell it on that slide, I've just noticed. But it's where it all starts, because that's how people discover. Questions?
All right, plenty, Jim. First question, is that a 9/4 pounder? Brendan's asked that one. I think he's looking for something for lunch.
I think it was a 2-pounder as it happened.
Right, there you go. I think that's 8 8/4 pound patties, Brendan. All right, a quick one on the authorship issue, which I think is a great topic to explore. Tash has got a good question. If you're a consultant or perhaps if you're a company that works with a consultant, they write a blog for you and they write a blog for your company. How does that authorship help you? You know, if they're writing in multiple places, is the impact of their authorship reduced for your business?
No, for them it's more about that. You know, if you're getting good authors writing content for you, that's that's better than having a bunch of crap authors writing content. So Google will look at that eventually. Sure, it's going to help them as individual authors, but regardless of where they are.
Yep. Okay. Just going to dash back to earlier in the presentation. And a question from Heidi, and I guess this is one around keywords. What are some of the best ways to figure out what words your competitors are targeting? Or shouldn't you focus on that? You just worry about what you're doing.
Yeah, I tend to take that that method, but if you do want to know, because I mean your competitors may have got it wrong. So, I mean, but if you do want to know that, there's a couple of tools out there. There's one called keywordspy.com, which is a little bit flaky, but it does work to a certain level. But it will show you, it will go and drill down and show you what keywords your competitors may be buying in AdWords. And, it might be good for inspiration if nothing else. But I would always do reality checks. Like we've got a number of keyword tools that we use. And there's about, I think there's about 4 or 5, and they're a combination of things. There's the Google AdWords keyword tool. There's Google Insights for Search, which is my favorite. There's a locally made piece of software called Market Samurai. There is Word Tracker is another service that can help you with keywords. That's wordtracker.com. And there's also one of the best ones that you can use, I believe, is Google Webmaster Tools. And especially if you are ranking for certain phrases, maybe you're on page 2 or maybe you're at the bottom of page 1, Google Webmaster Tools is sensational now for telling you the number of impressions that those search phrases get. Google Analytics will not tell you that. Google Webmaster Tools will tell you if you're on page 1 or on bottom page 1 or page 2, it will give you an idea of volume and whether you should be focusing more on those phrases.
Great, great. Question, related question from Anne and Annie around blogging, and I guess Anne's asked a really good question. Everyone's being encouraged to write a blog, but if we all do, won't the world be overrun with bloggers with not much to say? Which is a good point, although I guess you would think that you would like to see yourself or portray yourself as the expert in your field better than all those other bloggers. But Annie does raise a good related question about the idea of a group blog where different authors could jump in and offer different perspectives at different times on different subjects. What's your feeling on the group blog, Jim? Or would it be better to split those into individual things and let the individual's personality shine through?
I personally like the idea of a group.
Jim, are you there? I think
website.
Sorry, Jim, we just lost you for a second there. I might get you to go back to the start of that answer if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me okay now?
I can, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. I think the essence of having a brand around the blog, and having different blogs for different people that are about the individual, I think that concept is great if you want to be a professional blogger or if you want to be a blogger and be known as a writer or a blogger. But for a brand, your company website is essentially your blog, or should be. So I think the idea of a group blog is a great idea. And our brand journalist here, who when he's not writing content for clients, he's going to be contributing as a blogger on our site as well. But it'll be talking about different things to what I talk about. But I really don't think this concept of having to separate out blogs based on, you know, an individual writer's personality is necessarily that important when you're talking about business context, unless you're a publisher.
John's raised a really interesting question. He'd like your thoughts, Jim, on exposing clients to competitors when you perhaps like their business or follow their business or plus one their business. I guess that there's some danger that you might divert your precious client away from, divert their eyes for a second. But I guess it also shows that, you know, you're willing to work collaboratively and, you know, you take an industry-wide view of things.
Yeah, look, there's no more space. It's more competitive than SEO. Every man and his dog is an SEO company now. But I regularly will retweet, and I did it this morning, I pointed into a blog post on another SEO company that was talking about similar things that I've been talking about. And, you know, be brave. Be brave that your brand and your content is good enough to stand up with the best of them. And that, you know, this idea of, oh my God, I can't show our clients potential competitors, you know, they're going to find them anyway. The reason I started doing an SEO video, they're going to find out anyway, so they may as well find out from me.
Yeah, that's right. And who knows, John? Maybe you'll end up acquiring those competitors down the track anyway, and you'll be happy that you that you mentioned their business. Great question from Jeremy. Jim, and I'd love your thoughts on this. Spreading yourself across all social networking sites and methods, is there do you concentrate on a few, or do you try and get across everything as much as regularly as you can?
Well, I try to, because we like to test in here, but that's the main reason. I spend probably a lot more time on Twitter and Google Plus these days than when I do Facebook. As a B2B, Facebook, you know, it's not a biggie for us. If you're a consumer brand, I would suggest, yeah, you know, get a presence in Facebook, because that's where the action is. Learn about Facebook advertising and those sorts of things. But as far as, you know where your audience is. Have a think about your audience. Have a think about what Dave Meerman Scott talks about, which is buyer personas. Where does your classic client, your essential client, hang out? And go and work in those communities. It might be YouTube. Who knows?
Another question about authorship from Naomi. She's got several papers to publish. Does she just put a link to those papers once she's published them on her Facebook page, or does she need to do anything to sort of claim authorship?
Yes. And there is I don't know if I've still got control of the presentation, but basically there is, if you go and Google authorship, you'll find a page that tells you about it. But the sites that you publish on, you have to be able to link back to your Google profile from an author or a bio page on those sites with a little bit of code in the link that says rel equals me. And that will tell, and then from the articles themselves, you need to link from the articles to your author page with a little bit of code that says rel equals author. It's pretty basic stuff for any web dev or content manager. So if it's a bit scary, just get whoever's looking after your content to do it. With Facebook, make sure if you've got a Facebook page and it's a public one, then make sure that you set it up in your Google profile and point to it. And there's a little, when you point to it and you set it up in your Google profile page, there's a little box that you can check that says, this page is specifically about me. Just make sure that you check that box.
From Gemma, you've obviously spent a lot of time on different forms of social media. Jim, this is a hard one. Are you getting a sense of how different age groups interact with different social media? The bands she's thinking of is 20 to 35-year-olds versus 35 to 50-year-olds versus the 50-plus market.
Yeah, that is a hard one. Look, it's probably more about the content. And look, Google Plus is shaking that up again. If you're trying to target, there's 500 million people on on Facebook. I'm sure a lot of those demographics are represented, and they use it different ways. Twitter is there's probably, I haven't seen the stats on this, but from certainly what I'm seeing, there's probably less of the 50 plus on there. It's probably more the 30 to 45 type. And also then you've got things that are trending on Twitter. Justin Bieber trends out is constantly trending on Twitter, and that tells you something about the demographic that's also on Twitter. But
Yes.
it's around the searches that you do. Google's Plus is shaking it up again because it's using this concept called circles, which I won't go into now. But it's allowing people to really drill down on the content that they see and the content that they publish.
Yep. Yep. A lot of questions, Jim, about people who have businesses, and I guess there's a bit of trepidation about getting their personal brand, whether they need to get their personal brand associated with the business. What's your feeling? Obviously, for you, it works and positions yourself as a expert. Does it work for everybody?
No, I don't think it works for everybody, but I think at some point, it depends how big your organisation is too. I mean, I don't think it's going to hurt the NAB terribly much if they don't have a personal Twitter account from the managing director. But it depends on how important the individuals behind your brand are. A lot of the big tech brands will certainly have bloggers and tweeters out there because it's really important. And it depends what space you operate in and who your consumers are and what they expect. And if your consumers are engaging at a very personal level in say, Twitter, for instance, and you've got nobody engaging at a personal level in Twitter, then maybe you should think about it. But for instance, Ruslan Kogan does, and he can be a bit of a curmudgeon-y person on Twitter as well. But then the brand tweets out as well, which is separate to Ruslan. And I don't think it'd make any difference to Kogan whether he tweeted or not, but it's just another outlet for him to be a bit outrageous and stick it to the traditional retailers.
Yeah, and although I would say, Jim, there's nothing that quite impresses a customer like the idea that the head of a company's sort of personally taking an interest in their in them, either whether it's, as Annie says here, that when her company's fessed up to a mistake or admitted to a problem, that's so much more powerful when there's some identity behind it, I guess.
Oh yeah, couldn't agree more. Rather than just sort of some sort of faceless brand. Yeah, and that's a really good reason for doing it. I mean, I would recommend it, but I don't think that it's necessarily essential. It does depend on your audience, but yeah, I would strongly recommend it.
Yeah. Quick question from Julie. She's posted a YouTube video 2 months ago, hit 36,000 views today, climbing 1,000 per day with no promotion. Jim, I think you better go hire her.
Yeah.
Now, her question is, how did this happen? I agree that content seems to be the key, and if you have had no promotion, I think that's absolutely right. Content is the key. But she does have a follow-up question. What blogging platform would you recommend, Jim?
WordPress, without a doubt. Google loves it. And I would suggest, setting up your own. It's free software that you can install on your own server or get your webmaster to install. But Google loves it. As far as the YouTube goes, one of the things that you can go and look at, Julie, is under video section, go and have a look at Insights button, and it will tell you where those views came from. And this is another thing that happens on YouTube, is that if you happen to use a phrase in the title of your video or in the description of your video that is related to maybe another really popular video, it will come up and be displayed when the popular video finishes and it says show me related videos. We got about a 5,000 increase in views for one of my videos, and to give you an idea, my videos aren't any near as popular as Julie's, but it was just because I'd used a phrase in the video that related to another popular Google video, and mine was the first to show up after that.
There you go. Jim, look, we're getting towards the end of time. I just want to finish with a quick question. He's bombarded every day with emails from companies, particularly overseas, offering 50,000 plus ones, 25,000 followers, getting him on page one of Google. What does he do? What does he do when he's looking for an SEO provider? What things should he be looking for? Is it the ability to teach him about content and all that sort of thing? Oh, I think we may have lost Jim there. Okay, I think we've lost Jim there. So, look, we are out of time. So what I'm going to do is
a company.
Oh, you're back. Sorry, Jim, we just lost you there for a second.
There we go. I don't know what happened. No, I was just saying that Google's trying to always stop the scammers and the gamers. I get those emails all the time as well. I get about 200 a day of them, and avoid that sort of stuff like the plague, because at the end it's only going to hurt your brand. And to give you an instance of this, we had a big financial institution that had its brand damaged recently on Twitter because they'd hired a company, their SEO company had hired a contractor to do some of these things, and all of a sudden all these automated tweets started coming through Twitter about their brand, and that hurt them. So don't do that. To select an SEO company, find out get a recommendation, get a referral from another business, but have a look at some of the clients that they say they've ranked, get some testimonials, ask those SEO companies, can you speak to some of their clients? And I think that's a really good idea, is, give me the phone numbers of some of your clients so I can ring them up and talk to them and ask about their experience. But there's a bazillion SEO companies out there now, so I would say, yeah, research thoroughly.
Absolutely. All right, we've got to go. So apologies if we haven't got to your question. We will try and forward our questions to Jim, and they might spark a few blog posts and videos in the future. Just like to thank our sponsor of today's webinar again, Victoria's Small Business Festival, www.business.vic.gov.au/festival. About a week left. Get along to as many events as you can. Thank you very much for today's presentation, Jim. Absolutely fantastic, and I think we've all learnt something. I will hasten to say that we'll be sending out the recording and the slides of today's presentation in the next 24 hours. Jim, we've had a few requests for a bit more information on that authorship me question, so we might we might get Jim to add to the presentation a little quick slide or a link to some more information about that.
Sure.
And Jim, thank you again for a terrific presentation. The thanks are flooding in here in the questions bar, and that's testament to a terrific webinar.
Excellent, thanks, James. And yeah, look, there's a good Google link which I can put in that for you, which will explain it to the webmasters how to implement that.
Terrific. Thank you very much, guys. We had over 400 people on today's webinar. Lots and lots of questions, and we thank you very much for your participation. You guys help make these webinars so good. So thank you very much, guys. We look forward to seeing you again on Smart Company webinars. Thanks.